Monica, can you push out whatever you're trying to push out? Steve, we're on. And just so you know, we are on the air now.
Thank you for your email. That was wonderful.
Well, that was my wife's. She typed it in and I hit the enter key.
Made my day after yesterday, so thank you. He's on cloud nine.
She told me, he doesn't even come across as a real friendly guy.
He was just tickled.
He was so nice.
And he was tickled that you took, well, you took the time to recognize him.
Yeah.
You made his month, so thank you.
My wife was
You don't have an extra one?
The mic's all turned on until the heat starts.
Recess for about 10 minutes.
We need one.
Who'd you get? Oops.
Microphone.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Very good to see you. This is our special open meeting of the United Laguna Woods Mutual Board of Directors, a California nonprofit mutual benefit corporation. It's Wednesday, August 9th, 2023. It's 1:40 p.m. This is the notice of meeting and agenda. The purpose of this meeting is to review the proposed 2024 business plan version 3. So I'm calling the meeting to order, and we do have a quorum. And purpose of this meeting is to review 2024 business plan version 3. And is there any media here today or no? No, I don't think so.
Sorry. We're on Granicus and we're live on air.
We're on Granicus, okay. And we have Zoom as well? Zoom is working?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so first item is the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I second it.
Okay, and it's seconded. Okay. Chair remarks, I have none. This is a very important meeting, and I'm glad we have 7 board members here. Wish we had all of ours board members, but
8 member?
any 8 members?
And
Good.
one online.
And I welcome the members in the audience and board members in the audience. This is a very challenging budget that we have, and everyone in the community will understand it who's paying attention and watching us work through this budget. But we have a lot of challenges with regards to inflation, with regards to the age of our community, which requires a lot of infrastructure work and a lot of expense. And we have costs that are bearing on us from property insurance, which goes up about $1 million every year because of the wildfires. So we have a lot of pressures on us with cost increases, and we're trying to mitigate whatever we can, and staff is doing a great job in trying to do that, trying to control the expenses. And so you're going to hear quite a bit about it today, and we're looking forward to a productive meeting and your input as well. So we'll go from there. And I also welcome back to Steve. It's good to see you. Welcome back. And I'm glad to see you're feeling better and all is good. So welcome back, Steve. So with that, I'd like to open forum, 3 minutes per speaker. At this, members only may address the Board of Directors regarding items not on the agenda and within the jurisdiction of the Board of Directors. The board reserves the right to limit the total amount of time allotted for the open forum. Members can join the Zoom meetings by clicking on that link or call that number or email us to request to speak. So are there any open forum speakers?
Yes, but before we get there, we just wanted to let the audience know, remind them that we do have comment cards up here. We want to keep the meeting moving along. So we have a lot to cover today, so we will be asking you to fill out comment cards to make sure that we're able to process everyone's comments in a nice, organized manner. We'll also respectfully ask you to keep side conversations to a minimum because, again, it's a lot to cover, and we want to make sure that we're all hearing and understanding each other. With that said, it looks like we do have at least one comment here. Beginning with Andre Toring.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your effort coming here to review the budget. But before we talk about budget, I would like to talk about the directives and management. What's the difference between these two things? Okay, first, directive is the board's responsibility. Management is management responsibility. You hire expert to do the job. So expert make a recommendation and you approve it. Okay, but we always hear that VMS making the statement, the board made the policy, we just execute it. No. The board approved the recommendations from the expert you hired. If the expert cannot make the right recommendation and cause problem to this community, you need to replace the managing agent. And don't allow them to accuse you responsible for the bad execution of the policies or bad establishment of policies. Okay? May I ask, who makes the policy? The policies are recommended by the managing agent, and then you approved it. You are not the expert. Management company, you hired a management expert in the management company to provide the policy. If they are not expert enough to make mistakes, for example, like Gate 12, Gate 2, Clubhouse 2, Gate, Robin. Initially, there was no policy. Anybody can come in until people found that out. Who's responsible for that? Is board responsible for setting up policy, or the management responsible for setting up policy? Of course, management is responsible for set up the gate policy. And then they set up wrong the first time, cause more problems, and then they set up the second time. Are you responsible for all the mistakes that the policy caused? No. So please don't accept policy mistake as your responsibility. It's management responsibility. If they don't know how to do their expert, if they are not expert enough to take on the responsibility, then replace the management agency that can accept their responsibility and then do the job to serve our community.
Thank you, Andre.
Is it
Anything else
already?
you want to talk about on your remaining time?
What?
Anything else you want to talk about for your remaining 38 seconds?
Yes, I want to also talk about the threatening emails. That's overzealous execution of the policy. Okay, these policies should only be executed at a respectful way to the members instead of a threatening way to the members. Okay, so it is the board needs to set up a directive saying, hey, be respected to our members. They are our paying members.
Okay.
They deserve the respect that they pay money for.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andre.
Next, we have Ms. Jan Blake, matter number 481, Unit N.
Hi, good afternoon. I have a question. I know I've heard the answer before from Azar, but I can't remember why the treasurer's report isn't current, like for the current month, when you give it every time. That's my only question.
Because the current month, for example, this current month that we are, it will be close the book. The only way that they can give us the information after they're closing the book. And the closing book is the 15, in the middle of the month of the next month. So for example, this month, in the 15th of the next month, the book is closed, and then they can give the information. And by the time that comes, we are about 2 months before that comes to here. So that's the only way. Otherwise, we are always on time that giving, and Steve, if you are welcome to complete it.
Thank you. I'll expand only in that we also have a finance committee that from each of the boards. We're here at United. So the United Finance Committee reviews the financial statements. So the first group of board members that are privy to the information is the Finance Committee. They ask all of the relevant questions, and then once the questions are addressed, it is then presented to the full board. And that's consistent with many of the committees that we have here in the village, is that questions are first given to the committee, and then they're brought forth before the entire board.
How was it done in previous years?
If you can come to the microphone.
It's always the same.
Has this been consistent throughout the years?
Absolutely.
Oh,
Yes.
really? I've been here for 20, I don't remember. Okay,
Absolutely. And we encourage, if people want more timely information, they're encouraged to come to any of the Finance Committee meetings. They're similar to this meeting here. They're televised via Zoom. You can ask any questions that you would like to have answered, or you're welcome to come to the board meetings as well.
Just a correction, is not televised. The committee is not televised.
Thank you. It's
Yes.
via Zoom.
Yes, but you can come via Zoom, and also is in the website. So if you wanted 5 months ago, you wanted to check some things, the finance information is in the website under the Finance Committee of United. Third has separate and GRF has separate.
But that's full information.
But I said if you wanted to check.
Yeah.
But if you want, as I mentioned, this month, by 15 of the next month, this month it will be closed. And then comes to the finance by the last Tuesday of the month. Remember, next month at the 15 close, and all information comes to the last Tuesday of the month. After finance review, it comes to the next board, which is second Tuesday of the next month. So you can see it's 2 months behind, and there is no other way to do it.
Thank you, appreciate it. And
You're
thank
welcome.
you for all your time.
You're
and all
welcome.
You vote.
That's it. Any other responses to open forum? I guess that's it. Okay,
David.
so we're going to get started with the review of the proposed 2024 United Business Plan, version 3. And I think in order to get through this as expeditiously as possible, write your questions down that you have, and then at the end of the presentation, we'll have questions and answers. So rather than taking this piecemeal, let's go through it all, and then we'll have questions towards the end. So if you would like to start.
Fantastic. Thank you for the opportunity to come and share with you version 3 of the business plan for United. Just so you know, this is version 3. It sounds like we've only met 3 times, but as you can see here on your screen before you, we've had a total of about 20 organized meetings. This is something that we take very seriously. It's something that we've been working on for months now. We started back in March, where we came to you and presented the existing service levels, giving you an idea of what's in your current budget. That way you can have a better idea of what's in there. That way, as we were moving forward and projecting for 2024, we start with that groundwork. Then we came and we put specifically maintenance and landscape before you, because these are some of the areas where you have individual programs. So we were able to go with each of those department heads, piece by piece, program by program, both in operating and reserves. So that way you were able to take a look and ask your questions there. So then we put everything together for you in July and gave you a per matter per month and showed you your entire business plan. So this is the third iteration of the United budgets, but again, this is something that we've been working on for a long time and have been working with you at all these open meetings to develop the best business plan that we could. But I will say, if we go to the next slide, that despite our best efforts, despite everything that we have going on, there are some external forces that are absolutely affecting your budget, not the least of which, of course, is inflation. You've seen inflation on the news. There's a lot of going on with inflation. The cost of everything is going up, as you know, and that includes your employees. And as you can see, whether you go to your local food establishment or what have you, it's difficult to you can see prices rising on everything. But in addition to that, we have some utilities, and utilities were largely affected by increased rates in this coming year. We've been following the California Public Utilities Commission, the PCUD, quite closely to see what kind of rates they're projecting for next year. So all that's incorporated into your budget, and we'll talk about each of those items, but these are some of the items that are affecting your forces externally. Of particular interest to United is going to be property insurance. As you know, property insurance has been very difficult. I know that your risk manager came in and talked to you at length about some of those forces that are acting upon it, but the basis on which all of your insurance is calculated was substantially increased to reflect current market conditions. So you're going to see some of those items going, some pretty hefty increases. And of course, your union and non-union wage adjustments. Again, I alluded to earlier as far as staffing is concerned. prices and wages tend to be going upward, so it's becoming difficult for us to recruit and to retain good staff. So some of those adjustments are going to be necessary in order for you to be able to have the staff that you need to be able to do to fulfill all the service levels for which we contract. But those are some of the items that are external items that are affecting us. But in addition to those, we've of course staff has taken a lot of steps in doing what we could to help reduce your budgets and to make them a little bit easier for you. And to that end, we have our CEO, Siobhan Foster, and she's going to talk a little bit about some of those.
Thank you, Jose. Honorable President, members of the board, I wanted to touch on the budget development process. It's a comprehensive, iterative process, which we started in January with the VMS Strategic Plan Update. This is when the VMS board and representatives from United, Third, and GRF got together and affirmed 3-year goals for the village, including maintaining financial stability and longevity of the village, working in cooperation with the boards, and facilitating operational excellence and sustainability. The participants then set 6-month strategic objectives, including evaluating departments' vacant positions and identifying reductions in full-time employees to be included in the proposed 2024 business plans, and completing a top-down review of staffing levels to streamline operations and reflect those results in the proposed 2024 budgets. Between February and April, department heads reviewed actual and budgeted staffing levels for the period of 2018 to 2022 with executive management and determined what vacant positions can be eliminated and reasonable 2024 staffing levels based on efficiencies and process adjustments, as well as the inherent turnover in the current job market. Then in April, the department directors inputted their line item budgets. In May, executive management reviewed those budgets and recommended changes. And subsequently, executive management conducted departmental reviews with each of the departments. In June, the first version of the budget was published as a starting point. In these steps I outlined above, the executive team reduced the proposed budget by more than $6 million. And then in July, the version 2 budget and capital improvement plan was presented to the boards. On screen is the 5-year funded staffing trend. You will notice that funding for 695.75 positions is included in the proposed budget for 2024. This is a reduction of more than 15 positions from the current year and is a reasonable staffing level based on efficiencies and process adjustments and inherent turnover, again, in the current job market. So with that, I'll ask Jose to please take us through the rest of the budget.
Thank you. So I know that you're going to be asking yourself, so what does that mean to me, right? So what does that mean to assessments? So let me give you the bottom line here. As far as the United Basic Assessment, our recommendation for version 3 is that the United Specific Basic Assessment be $442.76. This is an increase of $19.85 per manor per month, or about 4.7%. So I will say out of those $19.85, 16 of that comes from contributions to reserves, or said another way, only $3.85 or 1.4 comes from operations. So we'll be talking a lot about operations today, but I do want us to keep that in our minds, to remember that as far as operations are concerned, 1.4% or $3.85 is what your total increase is going to be. But as members of United, you're not only members of United, but you're also members of GRF. So here's that same chart, but this time it includes the GRF portion. So you can see that in all, including the GRF portion, your basic monthly assessments will be $671.47, or an increase of $27.25, or 4.2%. So we'll be coming back for each of those specific lines, but I just wanted to put them all here in one sheet here in front of you. We will be talking about each of these items, but I wanted to give you the big picture as far as everything that we're going to be talking about. So we will be talking about operating revenues, we'll be talking about operating expense, and again, net, that revenue and expense is an increase of $3.85, or that 1.4%. We'll also be talking about reserve contributions and our recommendation for that. Along with our contracted reserve specialist, the recommendation would be an increase of $15 per manor per month. And We'll be talking about some history and as far as why we think that that's a good recommendation. We'll also be looking at the contingency contribution, which we propose increase from $1 to $2. Again, your total United Basic Assessment will be increasing by $19.85. And GRF had a very similar meeting to this on Monday where we discussed all of their components, but in all, GRF is going to be increasing $7.40. By the way, 5 of that has to do with the surplus recovery. That there was less surplus available to offset 2024 assessments. So again, only a couple of dollars, $2.40 of that were from operating for GRF. But we'll be talking about each of these individually. And for those of you that have been coming to these meetings prior, I have here a comparison between version 2 and version 3. You'll see it's pretty similar to what we've already been talking about, but as we continue to refine these, we did find a couple of adjustments. I'm happy to report that we were able to see an uptick in people electing to go electronic distribution as opposed to mailing distribution. So you saw some decreases in expenses there, which is nice to see. GRF had some similar decreases, and you saw that a grand total between version 2 and version 3, a decrease of 51 cents. But again, I promised you we'd be going through each of these, so we will begin with operating. Again, $3.85 is the grand total, but let's go through each of these together. We'll first start with revenue, and I just wanted to put a pie chart before you it helps me visualize a little bit better that the majority of the revenue that we're going to be talking about is going to be from fees and charges for services to residents, and that just is a fancy way to say these are chargeable services. So again, 2/3 almost of all of your revenues come from that. So let's take a look at each of the individual lines here, and I'll be making some comments as far as how it differs from 2023. The first is...
Can we ask questions along the way, or do you want to hold it until the end?
It's up to President Ross.
Let's wait till the end.
Yeah, write them down.
Okay.
Happy to come back to them later. Just want to give you a general overview, and maybe your questions will be answered, hopefully, as we go. But we'll begin with merchandise sales here. You can see there's not a lot of dollars there, but there is a slight decrease planned in merchandise sales just due to some averages. We looked at some averages and saw that in general we're selling slightly less light bulbs and stove burners and just a couple of miscellaneous things that we sell over at the warehouse here for you. Again, fees and charges to residents, these are the chargeable services that we're talking about. And we are anticipating collecting $1.5 million in revenue. And this is from a backlog of damage restoration hearings. So we've been behind in those damage restoration hearings, and we do anticipate coming in on the weekends and working extra hard to make sure that we take care of that backlog. The result will be that we're anticipating to collect $1.5 million that's owed to United. We do anticipate that 75% of that number, or $1,125,000, will be collected in 2024, and that's how we're able to decrease your operations there. So $1,125,000 comes from that backlog of damage restoration. As far as laundry is concerned, we're anticipating revenue to go down a little bit by about $21,000. And as you can see here, and I'm sorry, I should have described this before, all of these charts, you're going to be able to see 3 years worth of actuals, so 2020, 21, and 22, as well as last year's budgets and the proposed 2024 budget, and then also an assessment increase or decrease. So what does that mean to your assessment? So for example, on this laundry, we project to collect about $249,000 in laundry revenue in 2024. You can see that in 2021 and 22, it was about 240. So slightly more, but not as much as we had anticipated in 2023. So the end result is an increase in your assessments of $21,000 there. Miscellaneous revenue here. We anticipate collecting more revenue. And this is based on increased number of sales. We're anticipating that in 2024, the market will balance back a little bit more. We'll have some more sales, and that we'll be able to collect the fees associated with that. In this bucket of miscellaneous revenue, we have things like lease processing and resale processing. So that's what we're able to see, the increased revenue there. As far as expenses are concerned, again, we'll show a fairly similar pie chart here. And I will point out that between compensation, insurance, and utilities, this makes up 83% of all of your expenses. So big ticket items, of course, are going to be compensation, insurance, and utilities. But we'll go over each of them. The first is going to be employee compensation. Employee compensation is set to increase by about $415,000, and that's going to be primarily due to some planned wage adjustments for both union and non-union employees. Again, this is in an effort to attract and to retain employees that are able to provide all the service levels that we are planning to provide. Additionally, included in here is United increased temporary help for the recovery of the damage restoration reimbursements. In addition to this, part of the plan was to approve a little bit of extra overtime, so all these things can take place on the weekends, and that's in an effort to catch up on this backlog of work that needs to be done. And that way, during the regular week, we'll continue on pace and not get further and further behind. So those are some of the bigger items that are affecting employee compensation. And expenses related to compensation increased $86,000, and that's due to the increased taxes and benefits associated with those wage adjustments. So a slight increase there. It's also a result from contractual increases for medical and retirement contributions as stipulated in your contracts now. But moving over to the area of materials and also some utilities, you can see on your screen here, materials are planned to increase by about $60,000, and that's due to the planned rising material costs. I think Kurt came in and talked to you particularly about landscape and how each of those materials were going to be increasing, particularly the petroleum-based products. You're going to see those continuing to increase. So to that end, we do anticipate an increase of about $61,000 for materials there. When it comes to utilities, for utilities, what we do is we take a look back on utility usage for the last few years, and then we take a look at what the rates currently are. We do some research and figure out what the California Public Utilities Commission is recommending, and we make our projections accordingly. So, for example, electricity has increased by $23,000, primarily due to anticipated rate increases in 2024. Now, Southern California Edison has submitted their rate requests over to the California Public Utilities Commission, and they've agreed, and all those new rates are going to take place January 1st. So that's going to result in about $23,000 more than the previous year. As far as sewer is concerned, sewer increases by $83,000, and again, this is based on the current year consumption, projected rates, and they published their rates recently here at the beginning of this month at a recent El Toro Water District meeting. The same goes for water. Water increased $140,000 based on those same projected rates. I will say, though, for water, GRF undertook an irrigation project, and the irrigation project is set to save about $280,000 worth of water community-wide. Third portion of that is about $142,000. So happy to see that came through, but despite that, you're still looking at a fairly big increase of $140,000. And that, again, is because even though you're using less gallons, each of those gallons is costing a little bit more money based on some of those El Toro water districts. Trash increased by $360,000, and I don't know if you remember, but recently we have gone to a franchise agreement. So this is an agreement that's made with the city, so we don't really have a choice as far as which trash vendor to use. When they did go out to bid, when the city went out to bid, they realized that the trash collection was coming in at a lot. We were being charged a lot less than going rates were, so everyone that bid was significantly higher. They didn't want to sticker shock us all at first with those increased rates, so they put together a 5-year plan to where each of those years was going to have a fairly significant increase. Contractually in there, to give you an idea, for 2024, United's portion of that was set to increase 50% plus a 5% CPI adjustment. So it's a big increase. I know it is. we don't really have a choice as far as which trash vendors to use. So that's what you see here, an increase of $362,000. Telephone budget remained the same for some remaining analog phones inside of elevators within the mutual. So you can see total dollar spent, and these are all rounded to the nearest $1,000, but it's a minimal amount spent. The money is used for telephones inside of elevators in the mutual. Legal has remained unchanged at $183,000 based on recent experience. Professional fees has increased $44,000 due to planned expense to utilize a structural engineer for dry rot repair programs that wasn't in there last year. So that structural engineer is going to help us take a look at that dry rot, and United's cost is $45,000 there. Equipment rentals remained relatively unchanged. This is a relatively smaller budget here. Outside services has increased by $14,000, primarily due to moisture intrusion events being adjusted due to less moisture intrusion events that we're anticipating. Nevertheless, it's a $14,000 increase based off of a $2 million budget, so pretty flat here. Same goes for repairs and maintenance. Repairs and maintenance is increased $1,000 for increased costs associated with elevator and lift maintenance. As we're looking forward to other operating here, this section has remained largely unchanged, and the miscellaneous expenses that are found in here consists of uniforms, postage, training and education, and those type of expenses. Income taxes, United doesn't really pay any, so that remained at zero. Property and sales taxes, not that you don't pay any, it's just that what we're looking on our screens is the operating budget. Beginning in 2021, we switched over to having a property tax fund. So that's collected on another line, but it is $252,000. It's increasing $252,000 or 2.5%. And that's, of course, assessed by the County of Orange, but we'll talk about that in another slide here. Again, property insurance, I began talking about that early in our presentation and let you know that this increase is about 50% or $1,691,000. And again, the risk manager discussed property insurance in your closed meeting yesterday, and he'll continue to work on getting projected numbers from the broker all the way up until the very last second of that October 1st renewal. So this is something that we're going to continuously be taking a look at, and the negotiations go back and forth up until the 11th hour, but know that staff is doing what we can to decrease that number. Insurance, this particular line increased by $125,000 or 12% due to increased hazard and liability insurance to reflect the anticipated premium renewals. And on this last slide for expenditures, we have cost allocations. This area increased $121,000 due to overall increases from GRF departments that are allocated to United. For example, those include landscape administration, general services, and maintenance and construction. So your portion in United went up about $1.60 per minute per month. And uncollectible accounts have increased by $5,000 based on an upward trend. I will pause here and let you know that on that $1,125,000 that we're anticipating collecting for the damage restoration, more than likely some of that will result in having some uncollectible accounts. We didn't include anything in this particular line, but we believe that net of uncollectible accounts, we're still going to collect that kind of money. So this line might end up being a little bit higher than normal, but just to put that out there. And there was no change for gain or losses, and that remained at zero. So again, everything that I've just talked about has been net operating. So everything combined that I just talked about has been an increase of $3.95. With that said, I'm going to turn my attention to reserve contributions to keep this moving forward. And again, reserve contributions portion of your plan results in an increase of about $15 per manor per month. And this is largely due to the contracted reserve study that you have. So just to remind everyone, United contracts with the reserve specialist. The reserve specialist comes and takes a look at all of the areas of responsibility, capital, if you will, for which you have responsibility for the next 30 years. And if we make some projections as far as how much money is going to be needed to be expended for the next 30 years to make sure that each of these facilities is maintained. They compare that to how much money you have in your starting funds, and they have decreed that, and they come up with a funding percentage. This funding percentage is used with people coming into your community, with prospective buyers, and those kinds of things. So United is currently funded at a rate of 35.5%, and if you're like me, you ask yourself, well, is that good or is that bad? So down here on the bottom, this is, again, something that's put together by our reserve specialist. But this gives us, the reason that this is presented to prospective buyers is to give them an idea of how likely we are to have a special assessment. I will say that we've never had a special assessment in Laguna Woods Village, and we intend to keep it that way. And the way we'll do it is by continuing to fund our reserves. So, in the industry, if you have less than 30%, then you're considered to have a high likelihood of a special assessment. If you're between 30 and 70, then it's fair, and greater than 70, it's a low risk of special assessment. But I will say that this is a metric that they use for all homeowners associations, from a 4-unit building to a 6,000 unit housing like we have here. So it's pretty, it skews a little bit against us, but so 35.5% is quite strong. Again, that means that you have $15 million in reserves. So in addition to providing that, what they do is they provide us a 30-year plan. So this 30-year plan lets us know where we are, how much money they're recommending that we collect from our residents each and every year for the next 30 years, and also projects expenses over the next 30 years. So what I like to look at here is the color chart in the middle, and just kind of based on year one, we're at 35.5%. As we move throughout all 30 years, you can see we dip a little bit into the red and come back into the yellow. Of course, this is just a projection. Ultimately, the board will approve a plan for 2024. By law, we need to have a 30-year projection, which is what you see on your screen. Obviously, as we come up on each and every one of these years, they'll be brought before the boards, and the boards will make ultimate decisions. But that's what your 30-year plan here looks like. We thought this next chart was going to be a very, very important chart for you to not only see what we're planning into the future, but where we've been. And I want to pause here and regain your attention. This is a very, very important chart. This is a chart that's going to describe why we're recommending an increase of $15 out of all of your $19.85. So if you'll allow me here some time, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about history here. So on this chart, you can see starting in 2017, you had assessments towards your reserves of $138 per manor per month. Continuing through this chart, you see some investments and some expenditures and your ending balance. So 2017, you had an ending balance in your reserves of $19,285,000. The following year, you increased your assessments by $5, and your ending balance dropped just a little bit. In 2019, also increased your assessments, and again, you saw a drop in your ending balance at $17,253,000. I won't bore you, and I will let you know that each and every year, your ending balance has decreased, with the exception of 2020. And 2020, of course, was our COVID year. So there were a lot of expenditures that we didn't do because people weren't being allowed, employees weren't being allowed in your homes, and different things like that. So it makes sense to me that we didn't spend as much as we were taking in. That's going to be important because I'm just letting everyone know what the board's strategy is. The board's strategy is saying, hey, all these years, we've been planning on spending more than we're taking in. And that results exactly in what you see on your screen. You're going to see your funds go lower and lower. So we were tasked with, hey, we don't want to do that anymore. We don't want our reserves to go down any further. So as we're moving into 2024, you'll see that we have created a plan, again, based on our reserve study of how much money we're planning to expend. So showing what the assessment increase would need to be to make sure that our ending balances don't continue to decrease. I will say that the sticker shock, if you will, for 2024 is a little bit higher than in previous years because going again back to 2017, in 2017 you added $5. In 2018 you added $5. In 2020 you added $4. And then the board at the time thought that it was in the best interest of their members to maintain a steady per man per month, and that came at the cost of reserves. So you can see from 2020 to 2021 that the contribution to reserves decreased $10, despite a staff recommendation of course, continuing to put more into your reserves. The following year, in 2022, they maintained it at that amount. So what does that mean for us today? Well, that means that for us today, the recommendation is going to be a $15 per man per month increase in order to get back to some of those areas where we are. And in addition, in 2025, 6, 7, and 8, we are suggesting, and again, it's going to be approved by each board as we come year after year, but we're suggesting, or we're giving you a plan whereby you may maintain your ending balance. So those are the items that you see here on your screen. So again, for all those reasons is why we recommend that $15 per man per month increase for 2024. Here on these screens, I won't go through any of these in any large detail, but I gave you the grand overview as far as the reserves are concerned. Here is what we have planned for 2024, again, by category. You'll see that it's largely similar to what you saw in 2023, with a couple of notable exceptions. Building structures increased by $320,000. This has to do with scheduled smoke alarm replacements. These are items that are done once every 10 years, and 2024 is the time. On the next chart, you'll see roofing. We're planning on doing more roofing. That's higher than normal. But just wanted to give you an idea of all the different programs that are affected by these reserves. You have them both in your packets. You can see them online. I won't go through them in a lot of detail, but we do have those department heads here should you have any specific detail about them. That was all for M&C. We also have a few for general services here. Again, very similar to what it was in 2023. And also for landscaping, including slope renovation and improvement restoration there, what you can see. So going back to our business plan, we also have an opportunity to contribute to a contingency. And contingency is a little bit different than reserves because contingencies aren't required by Davis Sterling, but this is, think of it as a savings account, a nice to have, a prudent to have, really. So again, let me show you how we came to that conclusion here. Again, we show you the same chart from 2017 onward. Back in the olden days, we were collecting about $19 under this contingency fund, and you can see that our balances were $3 million. And you can see that that went from 19 to 14 to 15 to 10 throughout the years. And then we stopped the contribution. And the reason we stopped the contribution is because we also stopped the expenditures. And what was going on here is we used, before 2020, we were using this fund to help with the damage restoration. So if there was a flood, for example, we would use funds out of the contingency fund to clean up the mess, if you will, the dry downs, to break down, to dry everything down, to bring up the carpets, to open holes in the walls, and then we would use the replacement fund to actually go in and replace the pipes or whatever that had started to leak. Well, United took a look at it and said, hey, if this is something that's happening every year, then maybe it's not unforeseen. Maybe it shouldn't be done out of the contingency fund. So now those are funded out of the operating fund. So Long story short, I understand that we're not collecting very much money right now, but we're also not expending. That being said, it's nice to have this money. It's prudent to have a cushion here for you to fall back on. So to that end, we do recommend that you add another $1 to this, bringing the total up to $2 for a total projected ending balance of $1.3 million. This will be also nice to have. Once it gets to a certain point, we'll be able to use it to account for the timing of the property tax payment, as an example. This is one of those items that you can use that for, or obviously several uses in there. But wanted to give you an idea of how we came to the conclusion for that. And then the last fund that you have is a property tax fund. And this is a fund that varies because we very simply take whatever is assessed by the County of Orange, and we pass it directly on to you, and then we pay the County of Orange. So there's no extra fees or anything like that, and this is all determined, of course, by the county. But to give you an idea, we do anticipate it going up year after year at about 2.5% there. And as I alluded to earlier, GRF had a meeting on Monday. They went up $7.81. So again, that had to do with, well, let me just read it to you here. It went up $7.40 due to a reduction in available operating surplus compared to the prior year. So they had surplus again this year, but just not to the extent that they had in previous years. And the increase was partially offset by more revenue that they were getting for internet. So they have a new internet provider, and the split with GRF is a little bit higher than it was in previous years. So again, an increase there of $7.80. Wanted to show you what the bottom line is here. So we've talked about United Operating. We talked about the different fund contributions there. Again, United Operating has increased $3.85. The fund contributions increased $16, and the GRF portion was $7.40, or $27.25 increase. We do realize that property tax and property insurance is based off of the size or when you bought your units. So we do have some ranges there, but you see that for tax, we're looking at increases of anywhere from a modest 42 cents to about $10. And for property insurance, we're looking at increases from $3 to $42, depending on, again, the value of your units there. But wanted to put that there on a slide for you. So again, I will conclude with where I began, and that's saying that here is your United business plan. Net operating is increasing by $3.85, or 1.4%. We talked about the reserve contributions going up by $15. We talked about GRF going up by $7. So in all, the increase is $27.25. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the chair and be happy to answer any questions you might have for us.
Turn it over to Ari. Thank you for the presentation. Let's open it up to questions by board members at this point. So any questions from our board members? Go ahead, Allison.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The easy one, Jose. The contingency fund, you show zero for investment gain loss, but this fund is invested indeed in treasury bills, is it not? Bills and notes?
So all of your investments are held within the reserve fund. Currently, at any given time, there's typically borrowings from the contingency fund
Okay.
over to the others. So all of your funds at the moment all of your investments are housed in a reserve.
Okay.
If that money
So-
goes back to the contingency, you'll once again start earning income.
So this money is earning interest. It's not like it's earning zero. It's just that it's not shown in this particular segregated account.
That's correct.
Correct. And you can see the history there.
Yeah. Thank you.
Other questions?
No, you go ahead.
No, go ahead, you go.
You go?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. I have a few questions because President decided to go all of them at once. So I start with a few and let other people, and then I back to me again. Let's start with page 1 out of 19. Not here, this presentation. I don't know this presentation is there or not. It says fee and charges to residents. It shows that we are expecting, based on a good explanation that Jose gave regarding to backlog that we had, we are going to receive $1,125,000. And if you look at the trend for this one, that previous year and previous year and previous year, is the trend of fee without this blockage is pretty high end. It's keep going up. I expected at least with this trend, 900, when I add to that, the addition become 2,025,000. Well, I see here 1.9. I appreciate if you tell me how you end up with this number and what is your justification for not going more up. If you go to your page 15 for your presentation.
Yes,
Can you
that's where
put
I'm
the presentation, Erica, if by chance you can, page 15? Okay, you can see fee and charge is pretty nice trend. 373, 2020, 608, 2021, 753, 2022, keep going up, 820. With this trend, I am expecting at least 950 be for without backlog, be this one. When I add that one with what you said in this presentation that you gave it to us, 1,125,000, the minimum is going to be 2,025,000, and I'm not seeing pretty.
These are chargeable services, and chargeable services are provided at cost.
Yes.
So these are going to be, it's offset, meaning every revenue that you see here, you also see an expense. So,
I totally understand what you said, but my question is, this trend shows for 4 years we'll keep going up. Okay? So if I said by this trend, I'm not jumping, although from 20 to 21 jump, but even with this trend, if you added 900 to this price, it's going to be more than 1.9.
Agreed.
Any adjustable?
It's 804,000 without the backlog. It's $804,000, and we believe that $804,000 is correct. Again, based on your trend. The first three are actuals: 2020, 21, and 22. And you got to remember that the 2020 number is again the COVID number. We had a lot less chargeable services there. We believe that this is stabilizing, and that in 2024, without that, it'll be 804,000.
My question is why, when we have in 2021 606 and then goes up to 753 and goes up to 820, and you are saying goes down to 804, and then is going down.
Sure, if I can add to that. So obviously, these are totals, the $1.9 million. So in our individual schedules, we broke them down. There was 1 or 2 specific fees, like permits, that have actually gone down. So you can't necessarily take this number and just trend it upwards. We actually have detail
This is
and I know.
budget.
We have some detail that supports it, and there's a cause for it being a decrease in 2024 on 1 or 2 specific line items, such as permits.
I totally understand. Nobody knows what's happened next year. We are going based on budget is based on what's happened, the trend. The trend doesn't show us this one. Okay, that's my number one, that I want you a little bit more detail on that one, if by chance this goes up.
If I may, we can close that, because the cause for that decrease, the reason why it's not the 900,000 as opposed to the 820 is we have certain fees that are going down as opposed to up.
The next one, my question is in page 3 of 19. Not this presentation, the one that we have it, 3 of 19. They call it cost allocation. They said the cost allocation increased by 121,016. And my question is, and explain in this one, that this allocation is by budget from, by GRF department budget allocated regarding to landscape, general service, and maintenance and construction. My question is, all of these three have an account as an expense in United. To explain to residents to understand, allocation, they did a great job. Finance, for presenting in the finance. Allocation means GRF paid, for example, I give you example, for landscaping, and then they allocate to us for portion. For example, if they pay 10,000, they said 2,000 is belong to United and send to us a note, and we give back that 2,000 to them. My question is, landscape, general service, and maintenance and construction that is here all has already an account and collected money from those. So why we should again put a line 23 cost allocation and collect money from residents? Is kind of, maybe not, maybe I'm wrong, but kind of is double charging residents. Because we already charge residents for landscape, we already charge residents for general service, we already charge residents in our budget for M&C. We don't need, again, come and put allocation.
So the biggest difference between what you see from, in your example, the 5,000 coming from landscape, from general services, when we budget in the employee compensation in the various line items that you see up top, those are our direct charges. In addition to that, we also have indirect charges. For instance, certain departments, such as finance, each department allocates a small percentage of, so finance will go to general services, and general services will in turn take a little piece of there. So all those indirect charges get captured in this cost allocation line. Again, we'll refresh the financial, the presentation that we provide at the Finance Committee meeting, and at a later time, we'll be happy to go into further detail to explain exactly how those numbers move.
I totally understand, and I'm sure residents understand too, that this is different things. That's why you put it under allocation. But all of those different, as you can see, we have a budget for all of those. There is nothing that you mentioned that there is no budget on that. So when there is a budget for those little, for finance, for landscape, for M&C, we already got money from residents to those. And then again, come at the bottom, again, we charge them for allocation. That doesn't make sense to me. I'm a little bit dumb. I don't understand. And that doesn't make sense. Again, we collect them.
Again, it just depends on the department, so.
Okay, you can back to me, at least convince me. I am more than happy, but at this moment, I am not convinced why we should charge residents twice for same things. That doesn't make sense.
Explain that, Tom.
And you don't get charged twice if I may go off of.
Give
the
example.
deep end. Sure, I'll give you an example. If we can turn to page 5 of 19 and 6 of 19. So in your packets, you have this business plan. So we've summarized it on your screens here because this is frankly too small to read. But on page 5 here, you have a business plan by account, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you'll be able to take a look at everything by each individual account. It seems this is what we cover in this particular meeting because it seems like that's what you want to hear. However, the exact same numbers that are on here, we show on the following page, if you will, on page 6, but this time we organize it a little bit differently. So we organize it based off of department. So, for example, let me pick on human resources here for a second. Human resources, you have an entire department of human resources, and you can see that your cost here is only $89,000. This $89,000, I went and I looked up. The only thing that United is being directly charged for is legal. This is the legal fees associated with any employee relation type things. So what happens to all the other recruiters that we have upstairs and the people doing workers' comp and all those kinds of people? What happens to those is they get allocated, and that's what you see on that allocation line that we're looking at. So you are not getting double dipped here on the screen. You can see you're not getting charged anything for human resources other than legal. Instead, it appears on this allocated line.
I'm sorry to say, but all of those mention human resource, and all of them has a budget. If you think $89 is not good enough for human resource and must be more, then put it here. But doesn't mean that you have to put this on 89 and later you charge us again for human resource. That's
It's
what
not-
I am saying.
It's not later, it's in a different line.
Allocation here, allocation in the finance makes sense in the every month, because every month we are going. But for budgeting everything, every line has a budget.
So-
From 1,000 for phone, that you even said 1,000. I was laughing, but it was good. At least 1,000 we have from the biggest one. So
Agreed. And so again, getting back to this example of human resources, so if we know that human resources spends a lot of time recruiting for, let's say, landscaping, then where should we attribute that cost? On this particular slide, we attribute that cost under landscaping, but we don't call it a human resource line, we call that an allocated expenses line. So it is in here, you're only getting charged once, it just happens to be on that particular account.
Okay.
I hope residents convinced. I am not.
Okay, Zara, do you have
Okay.
another question? or
Yes,
should we go
I
to
have,
someone
I
else?
have another questions. I am willing
Should we-
to give to
should we go
another
to another
person.
director,
Yes,
or-
yes, absolutely.
Okay, Tom.
I just want to follow up on Azar's comments here, because we do have a landscape budget, but it's only in the reserve account. That's
No.
listed by line item on the presentation today. Is that correct? I didn't see any
No,
landscape in
landscape
the
has-
operating, because it's included in the employee compensation for some of the labor. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's in your agenda on page 13, but
Right.
yes, on a presentation, that is correct.
So all you're seeing in the operating is any kind of worker compensation, I don't want to use workers' comp, but salaries, wages, benefits showing up for our landscape would be in the allocation, or it's in the employee compensation
Employee
for
compensation.
landscaping?
Employee compensation. Again, it's the same numbers. Again, the bottom line is the same. On one, we present it by account, and on the other, we present it by department.
And so when we get to the reserve account, we're talking, when we have it specifically listed as landscape, we are talking mostly outside services there, is that correct? With slope renovation, tree maintenance,
Yes,
improvement, and restoration.
yes.
So the only landscaping showing up there is basically outside services. All of our other landscaping costs are showing up in either employee compensation or allocations in the operating account.
That's correct.
Doesn't make sense.
And then as far as the material cost in landscaping and everything, for the operating account, where does that show up?
Under materials and supplies,
Okay.
And vehicles, landscape vehicles.
allocated.
Okay, so can you refer to page 17? Employee expenses, employee compensation, compensation-related expenses. So it looks like the employee compensation for United is going to go up by $415,000 next year. It's about a 5% increase. And you had said, or it was indicated to us, that there would be about 16 FTEs less for next year. And so I was thinking that all of those would be United, which is incorrect. But if that was the case, if they were all United, then by an easy calculation using $50,000 per employee, there would be, based on 16 employees times 50,000, that would be about an $800,000 decrease rather than an increase of 400,000. But obviously, not all those employees are United. So out of the 16 employees that are being released or removed or reduced, how many of those 16 employees are from United out of that 16? Because I think you answered the question to us, but you didn't tell us how that was broken down.
So a total of 10 and a half were from GRF. That left 5 and a half to split between United and Third. So
10 and a half from GRF and 5 and a half.
split between United and Third.
Okay. So my question to you is, even though 10 and a half are GRF, don't those employees do the work for United and Third? And why would they be considered, why wouldn't we share that with GRF? So that we would get a third and United would get, Third would get a third and GRF would get a third? You know?
So when we looked at this, and Shaban did a good job of explaining what we did, we really went back to talk to each individual department head, and we went area by area, department by department, work center by work center, and we were able to identify, I mean, I have them written down as far as what they are, but the majority are going to be out of recreation, which United has no part of. Security were some big decreases. Transportation and bus drivers, we were able to consolidate some of the items in there, and those are all GRF specific. The ones that weren't GRF specific, we're looking at about 5 and a half full-time staff equivalents.
And how many were from security? Was it 6 or something?
I did want to say something like 6. I don't have.
But wouldn't security be United? Why would security be considered GRF? I guess I'm just curious.
Security is primarily a GRF function. Taking a look now here at the Green Book. The Green Book does a good job of breaking down who pays for what. When it comes to security, out of a $6 million budget, $6.2 million budget, United pays $200,000 of that. So it's very small.
Yeah. If I could also remind the board and the audience that this reduction of the 10.5 people from GRF, the community as a whole is benefiting from it because obviously you're seeing a reduction on the GRF element of your monthly assessments. So regardless of whether it's coming from United or GRF, at the end of the day, you are benefiting from those reductions.
Okay. I had another question regarding reserves. So I'm trying to understand the difference between page 24 and 25. I'm looking at 24, and I'm trying to find the same numbers in 25, but I don't seem to see them. Like, for example, on 24, the ending balance is 14,350, but on page 24, the ending balance is 14,3, I can't even read it. It's a little bit different, 14,657. And the numbers change for 2026, 2027. The ending balances are all different from the two charts. So I'm thinking there's different variables going into those years, especially the next 5 years.
Sure.
So I was hoping we could get something with the same information on it.
Agreed. And again, for slide 25 here, we had indicated and we had talked about the ending balances, how the ending balances had been traditionally going down year after year, with the exception of that COVID year. It was my understanding that it was the board's desire that no longer happened, that we wanted to balance the budget was the term I had heard, meaning that we were going to collect what we were going to spend. So to that end, on the chart here that you see on chart 25, we've come up with a way where that can happen. And the way that can happen is by increasing the assessment. Right. So you can see there, if we were to go this funding route, then we would end up not decreasing any of that ending balance. So that's what we show you here on slide 25. Slide 24 is the association's recommendation. The association does recommend that you actually bring in less money than you spend. We talked about it as a board, and we thought that that was probably not the best of ideas given our track history. So that is the reason that we're providing you with slide 25 as it stands.
I'm still a little confused, but what we asked last month was two things. We asked you to add $15 for each year for the next 5 years onto the chart, and that would be 2024 to 2028. And we asked you to adjust the interest rate from 2.5, I think it was, to 4%, to show a more realistic amount going forward, and then project out the amounts that we're going to be spending each month. So which chart shows that, or does neither chart show that? I guess that's my question.
The original reserve study that we had taken a look at showed interest rate of 1%, which we did think was pretty low.
Okay.
We talked to the reserve specialist, and they weren't comfortable really going too much higher than about 2.5%. This is on their chart, their program. You can only use one particular interest rate, and over the next 30 years, we felt that 2.5% was probably about right when you're looking at it from a 30-year perspective, just from some of the long-term planning. So that's the number that we went with there as far as an interest rate is concerned. And again, it's just a matter of what approach do we want to take? Do we want to take the slide 24 approach, where we are comfortable with collecting less than we're planning to spend, knowing that will change? Or do we want to make sure that our ending balance is going to stay constant? And there's pros and cons to both. You can see on slide 25, going from years 2026 to 2027, would we get to that point and realistically offer you a decrease? I don't know.
So the expenditures, for example, are much more in slide 25 than in 24. The expenditures per year are much more in slide 25.
They're the exact same, actually.
Are they the exact same?
Mm-hmm.
From 24 to 28?
Yes. It's the ones on the far right column. So again, for year 2028, 15,702,000 is what you see there. And on the previous slide, for 2028, all the way on the right-hand side, 15,702,000.
Okay, I see. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, so let me make sure I understand this. Slide 24 is the outside specialist that we hire to look at our reserve plan and to recommend something.
Yes.
Which this board, it says that's unacceptable to us because that puts us in a real bad situation for our reserve balances over the years. So this board is saying that that is not an acceptable plan because we continue to spend more than we're bringing in. The slide 25 is a reserve fund that you have put together as a proposal for this board to look at. And that includes a $15 increase this year, basically a 25 the following year, 17 after that, and then dropping down $15 and then going up $4. And I think Lenny has proposed a 5-year plan of increasing $15 per year over the next 5 years. And that's the one we don't have in here, what that would do. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And have you run that possibility yet, or?
Yes, and it just kind of ebbs and flows. And obviously, there's a lot that can go in here. Ultimately, it'll be the board's responsibility to approve 2 things. One will be, what are we planning on spending in 2024, a 1-year mark? And then to put together, at least on paper, over the next 30 years, is there a plan wherein we have a plan going forward for the next 30 years where we will be able to pay for everything, or have enough funding in order to be in place for everything that needs to happen over the next 30 years. And that's what you saw on the previous slide. Obviously, as we come to 2025, come to 2026, we're going to have more updated information. We're going to be coming before the boards and getting direction at those points.
And if we balance the budget this year in the reserve fund, we would look at adding at least $30 basically to the assessment instead of $15. And it was this board's decision so far that we did not want the residents to have to take on that burden this year, the full $30 to balance the budget. And therefore, next year would be another increase. And according to your plan, it would be a $25 increase next year.
That's correct. So said another way, from 2023 to 2024, you can see that the fund is again going to go down from 15.6 million to 14.3.
Right. And so basically, we've been saying we can't afford to keep spending more than we're taking in, and we need to do something about that. You have a plan here that covers that. Lenny has another approach that he'd like to see looked at or presented. But either way, we need to do something so we do not end up in the situation that slide 24 predicts.
Exactly.
And I guess that's what I have to say on that one.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you for the explanation. Yeah, just to reiterate that, thank you very much. Yeah, if you could, maybe for the final rev, or show one more chart, just to show 2024, the effect if we did increase $15 per year from 2024, 2025, 2026, 2027, 2028. And then are the expenditures a realistic projection that are shown on 25 for 2024 through 2000? How did you come up with those expenditures?
Those expenditures, again, we just saw they were the exact same that the reserve specialist recommended. What they do is they come on site once every 3 years to evaluate and take a physical inspection of all those items. In addition to that, we work with them and let them know how much money we have actually spent to repair and to maintain those items. So they take all those and put them in their projection software, and that's what has come up. So again, these are going to be based off of average lives of roofs and of all the different components that you have. Obviously, our experience is going to be probably different. So every year we continue to go out and look and see what's needed for the current year. So that's the purpose of some of the meetings that we've already had, is where we literally went line item by line item, taking a look at some of those individual spends. So it's something that's continuously refined and looked at.
And the second thing is that if you could adjust it to $15 for the next 5 years, but I'd also like to adjust the interest rate upwards from 2.5%, because T-bills are paying 4.5%, CDs are paying 5%, and for the next 4 or 5 years, I'd like you to adjust it to at least 4% for the next 5 years and see what that results are on this particular chart. I think that's a realistic request.
Can I add something to you, Mr.? As we had a talk, as you know that we have a new investor advisor, and with the last talk that we had, they said you can fix for 5 years for 5.3%, fixed 5.3. Although, because we have in the intersection of 2 million, the moment that applied and be matured, we can go, if board decided, go for 5 years and then get 5%, 5.3. And this conversation that I'm talking is just a matter of a few days. And this is happening right now. We can fix it right now for 5 years for that one. And, or if you wanted to, it's up to board, decided if they wanted to continue as a short-term changing, is up to them. But I wanted to say, yes, it is true, we can get it. Anyway, even not 5% or 6%, this 374 is not realistic at this moment that we are talking. is just like 2.5. So even I put 4 is 675,000. So these numbers, when it's not correct, of course the result ending balance is not correct. It doesn't, you can write down whatever you want it, but it's not reality. I don't know where you got the 374.
So our request is, for the next rev, could you change those particular assumptions to 4% interest at least and $15 per year for the next 5 years? Those two assumptions.
We can change whatever you'd like. Again, at the end of the day, what we're going to ask is we're going to ask for you to approve the 2024 expenditures, which I haven't heard too many questions about, and then a 30-year funding in concept. So if we were able to do that, we would then shy away from the reserve study that we've paid for.
Is that an answer that you're going to come back with the adjustment? Can you come back with the adjustment?
Okay,
Okay.
that's what can
Thank you.
pass. And you go and
Tom.
I'll go after you.
I'd just like to say, each year, the board is going to make a decision each year. So even if we put a 5-year plan in place today, whoever's sitting on this board next year is going to make the decision of what goes forward then. So it's just a plan, and we can only do this year's coming up on this board, regardless of what plan we put in place. The other thing I want to say are the expenses in the reserve fund are, to me, critical expenses that we can't afford to let our infrastructure, our sewer pipes, our roofs, and our structures deteriorate. So the expenses there are needed expenses. And I wouldn't want to see us cut the expenses in order to balance the budget, because then we're just deferring our maintenance, which will create more problems for us in the future. So I just want to say that that's my position on it, and I do appreciate all the work put into it and the work that's done by our VMS staff.
Okay, Sue, you go. Then after you, I go.
I'd like to talk a little bit about this too, in going through the proposal. First off, I would like to commend the staff. I think you've done a really good job for keeping the overall increase to essentially $3.85. That's really amazing, as to what you were able to do with that. What's problematic is we have to increase the reserves by $15. And frankly, I resent having to do this, but we must do it. And I feel that it was not adequately funded in the past, and so consequently, we are now paying the price for such a thing. And so I don't know who will continue to be on the board, but I would encourage them to continue to put money into the reserve. When I came here, I thought reserve was like the contingency fund. We had different descriptions from where I worked. Reserve was like the contingency fund. The reserve is really important, as Tom was saying, because it's the infrastructure that we have to keep the sewers going, we have to keep the roofs going, we have to have all of this. And to let it get so low, I'm just shocked that this happened. So anyway, I resent it, and I want it acknowledged, and for those who fought for it, good for you, and those that didn't, and now we are in the situation that we are, I hope we understand the importance of this. And certainly I don't want to sit here and cast blame, because I know everyone does not like to have assessment increases, and you're always trying to work to help your resident. But this was, I think we need to continue to put money into the reserve. The question is how much per year, and for how long, and how much do we have to have? Do we have to have 100% reserve funding? When you look at the charts and it says, where we need to be safe, where we need to be not in fear of having to do a special assessment, those are the things that I think we need to think about clearly and really put some thought into this. Because I know that even though it's only $3.85 for our people that's going up, does not include the property tax, that does not include the insurance that's going to come forward. And I know people are going to be very, very upset about this. So there's really not much we can do about the property tax increase. And there isn't much we can do about the property insurance, other than to try to work, I believe, with our congressional delegation and with the Secretary of Insurance here in California. I think we've got to do more than just say, this is problematic. I think we need to have a plan to reach out to people to try to stop this. I know it's like putting a finger in the dike, but at least it will be our finger trying to get into the dike. So that's where I am on that. And then I'd like to go through, I'd like to commend Dan Yost, who is our person who's working on property insurance. He has worked so diligently and so hard on trying to get decent rates for us, along with USI. And so even with that, we are lucky to get insurance. You know, it's being cut every place. So we have to keep our maintenance up. We have to do all of this in order to prove to insurance companies that we are worthy of them coming in and charging us a fortune to insure us. So that goes up almost, our best guess at this point, it's going to go up like $1,691,000. That's a lot of money. But that's because, and we're lucky, frankly, to get this amount. If they're still negotiating, they're still trying, but it's a real problem for everybody on the coast. So then I'd like to go to the employee compensation. And again, that is on page 7 of 19 in your packet. And I am not saying that we should not give 5% to the staff on expenses, but I printed off something that said in 2020, the inflation rate was 1.4. In 2021, it was 7%. In 2022, it was 6.5. It's projected to be 3% in 2023, and that's not in your packet. I'm sorry, it's in a packet that I handed out to people. So here we have salaries and wages projected at 5%. I just want to know if this is a fair representation of where we should be, or if it should be 4%. Based on the years earlier in 2018, it was 1.9. 2019, it was 2.3. 2020, it was 1.4. Huge spike in 2021. It was 7%. Some say 8. 2022 was 6.5. So I guess I'd like to be convinced as to why it should be 5 and not 4. If you guys can help me with that, I would appreciate it. Because I certainly know it's very expensive to live here, and people work hard. People work very hard here. So that is kind of where I am with that. Then you go to page 16 of 19, and that's the reserve fund. And you all talked about that. We're going up $15 if we do it this way. Then the next year, I believe it's up $25 and 17, and 4. So it's just, we have to put money in the reserve. What that distribution is, our finance team has worked hard to try to figure it out, but I think that's something that we need to note. Then on our property taxes, I would like to know what the heck we're getting in our property taxes for a $778,770 increase. That's a lot of money to the city of Laguna Woods, and we have no control over that. But it is what we're going to have to pay, and so I'd like to figure that out. That's on page 17 of 19. So again, I'd like to commend the staff. I think they've done a great job. I think the board has done a great job in trying to sort this out. But there's still a few questions I have.
Okay, let's go to someone else.
Okay, I have a question. Okay, yes, I'm going directly. I cannot talk a lot about the way that the Sue talks. I am normally very straightforward for the question rather than 15 minutes just talk. The question is about page water. If you go to the water, we're going to the page 18. I can see that the explanation for the water was this. 140, and the explanation that we receive in this package is basically, they said the project is expected to save 280 regarding to this master irrigation control project, which is great. However, I am not seeing any decrease in the amount regarding to the turf reduction that we have. We gave a 280,000 to one place, and then there is for the turf reduction, and we expected with the turf reduction we have less water as well. I am not seeing any, even $1 less for that matter in this line.
Correct. And again, so this is one of the things I talked about. We agree, we're going to be spending less, we're going to be consuming less water, we're going to be consuming less gallons. However, each of those gallons is going to cost us more money because their El Toro Water District is raising the rates. They're raising both the variable cost rate, in other words, the operating, and they're also passing along a 9% increase for their fixed costs. They're calling it O&M, operations and maintenance, and R&R, I think, is repair and replacement. So they are passing along their fixed costs. They're passing along higher rates, and the result of that is the increase that you see here. Were it not for the irrigation that came into play, you would be looking at $282,000 increase.
So is consider that one based on you are projecting the price of water goes up, and that's why you are expecting this much? Because I'm not seeing anything for turf reduction.
Correct. We are projecting that that's going to go up based on what El Toro Water District was able to get past the California Public Utilities Commission. They gave a big presentation at their August 1st meeting and provided that televised to all who would listen.
Okay. And my next question is regarding to compensation and salary that mentioned, Sue. They said, I know in 2020-21 wasn't 5%, was 2.5%, and then goes the last 2 years 5%. However, if I am seeing at the end in 2024, the budget is $3,560,000. And when I see in 2020 is $2,005,062, the difference is almost $1 million. And when you divide it by, the percentage is way more than 5%. Is there any reason for that?
Sorry, between which years?
The 4 years, 2020 to 2024.
Oh, the 2020, 21, and 22 are all actuals. So you're comparing 2020 actuals when we're talking about wages. Remember, 2020 was a COVID year, so we had a lot of things closed. We had a lot less staff on hand. That actual for salaries in 2020 is extremely low.
I just said when you minus and then get the percentage, you get 40% from 2020 to now. 40% goes up rather than.
And again,
5.
in 2020, we had a lot less employees.
Okay. And I wanted just to mention, because I heard as a lot of people that we didn't put money on the reserve account, people forgetting very fast. It was 2021. It was COVID. No clubhouse was open. People was upset. People didn't get any service. And at the same time, if we put it exactly the same amount money, and then people really were angry. Still, I have the papers and from those days that how much they write down, and they were angry. And at the same time, board, when we sitting together, decided if all of the sudden with all of this anger, the association fee goes $30 up, is not reasonable. And that was the reason that day. And at the same time, I am proud that we put money that for all of the, for the reserve repair, for the plumbing and roof, we put that one. But for the reserve, I said at least for this year, we can stop until next year. So it's not just because it didn't adequate, it was the timing, very pressure, but people forget that 2 years ago what's happened, and then things passed. They were angry. They were amazingly angry that no clubhouse, nothing was happening. So that was, I wanted to give information about that why they are keep saying.
Let's get back on point. So thank you, Zar. So I wanted to be sure that
President
staff
Ross,
was reviewing
microphone, please.
Sue's questions that she had. Sue raised several points. One of them was the salaries. If you could take another look at the salary increase and see if that could be reduced from 5% to 4%. I think that was one of the points.
Yeah.
You said, and there were several other points, and I don't remember them offhand, but one of them had to do with property taxes.
Right.
But I don't remember. But if you can respond to those points, or maybe you could summarize a couple of those.
Sure. The main things were the property insurance, and again, there's not much I don't think that we can do about that. That's per man or per month, and that will be based on square footage and some other things, and that will be added separately to this, if I understand this correctly. Then we had talked about the employee compensation, and then, let's see here, the other item that I was, the assessment of the property tax fund, that is, if from 2023 to 2024, it goes up $778,000. Again, I know that is not anything that we can do. It is page 17 of 19. And then the reserve fund, we were trying to look at the reserve fund, and that is on page 16 of 19. And I just was pointing out, as did Lenny and did Tom, that the 15, the 25, the 17, and then the 4. But I don't know where that puts us at the end. I don't know if does that get us to the full funding, or is that just getting us in the mid-range?
In the mid-range. Let me take a couple of these here, if I can get Erica to show slide 39.
Mr. President?
Yes.
May I
Alice.
just comment about property taxes? That's just a pass-through. We can't do a thing about property taxes.
No, we can't.
So, maybe...
I understand
So, yeah,
that.
they go up, and we have to pay them, and we all pay them,
Yeah,
and
this is
BMS
not something we can do.
I understand
passes
that.
them through to the taxing authority, and that's kind of the end of the story.
It just adds to the bottom line that people get the sticker shock.
They do what? I'm sorry.
It gets the sticker shock,
Oh, well-
But there's nothing we can do about that.
Yeah.
I said that. I
Okay.
just want to know
All right, so-
what we're getting.
So I want to talk a little bit about employee compensation, if I may. And here, on your screen here, you have a 15-year comparison of the CPI versus the budgeted wage increases over the last 15 years in the community here. So again, the green line, if you can appreciate the difference there, it's hard to tell, I'm sorry. The green line is going to be budgeted increases versus the blue line of CPI. And you can see in particular, ever since 2017, or ever since VMS took over, that CPI line has been significantly above the budgeted increase, and that means that your employees, their dollar is not going as far. Every time that blue line is over that green line, that means that their purchasing power is lower. And you can see that since 2017, this way, the blue line, the CPI, has been above. And so what we're experiencing now is, as a whole and in general, it may look more appetizing, appealing to look elsewhere for employment. And that's one of the issues that we're seeing. You hear us talk month after month in our finance meetings that we're having a hard time hiring, we're having a hard time doing those kinds of things, and this is one of those reasons. We're not alone. Obviously, you see out in the communities, you see a lot of that same issues. And so you mix this in with all the competition that we're getting, particularly at those introductory types of jobs, and we have a very difficult time recruiting. So to that end, we have thought it was prudent to budget where we're budgeting for 2024.
Yeah, said differently, we're just trailing behind the industry, right? And so we were averaging 2.5% for a number of years, where during those years where we were only paying 2.5%, the inflation was increasing dramatically. Even though now you're seeing it declining, we're still trailing the industry. So we need another year to catch up.
Okay, Maggie.
Yes, and we must remember that we have reallocated workloads too, and tasks performed. And so people this year and next year will be performing extra duties because we have fewer staff to cover it. And so we can't also ask them to do their old rate because they're doing more. That doesn't make any sense. That wouldn't be equitable, and why would they do that? We're absorbing the extra work from the lost positions into everybody's positions. So I would say I prefer we leave it at the 5%. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, I have one more question. On page 18, and it's regarding the significant increase due to trash. And I know that's because we're using the city services, but is there any way we can opt out of that and use our own trash service? Or, no,
Unfortunately, no.
we can't do that.
No, it's
Why is
contractual.
that?
Contractual. So we're required to use the services that are provided by the city.
It's because of what?
We're required to use those services provided by the city.
By the city.
It's
Okay. No question. If I can also touch back, I mean, just add a little bit more to the property tax, just to reassure those people that see the big increase. In the previous years, in 2023, I think 2022, those are actuals, and they also include supplemental property taxes, which are not included in the latter years. If you do the math off to the right, I can show you at a later time. It does show, for instance, if you apply 2022's rate multiplied by 1.02, 2% increase, it falls in line to the penny off to the right. The 2023, where we move from actuals to budget, it's thrown off a little bit, but because it's the difference between the supplemental property taxes and the traditional ones. Presentation, but to Director Bach's point, it's all flow through. You don't really have a choice.
Nothing we can do.
So we charge you what the county charges you.
Okay.
Tom.
Yeah, I have one question and a couple of comments. Question to staff would be, where do you see the risks in the 2024 budget? And I'll let you answer that before I make comments.
Can I talk about unions?
Obviously, one unknown is the union contract, and we can't go into much specific here today, but we've been keeping you apprised in closed session on how negotiations are going, but that's one unknown.
And then the other unknown is going to be, are we going to be able to hire? This is a good plan, and I'm concerned that if we're not going to be able to hire staff as planned, then we would have to contract it out, and contracted staff tends to be more expensive.
And then my comments here is, based on this budget and what we're expecting in the property insurance and property taxes, our members should be looking at somewhere between a $31 and $80 per man or per month increase.
Right.
That's what I'm seeing based on these numbers, based on the unit you have and the square footage and everything. So that's quite, for some that's going to be sticker shock, and for others maybe it's expected.
Yep.
And that brings me to my third comment. Sometimes we get good ideas proposed to the board, but it costs money to add to like 2024 budget. For instance, I think Kurt brought forward a plan to help take care of, the different tree droppings around the United, which there are a lot, and it causes a problem. But that would add almost just under $2 per manor per month. And so we have to look at that in relation to $31 to $80 increase already. And sometimes we just say it's a good idea, but we don't think we can afford it and that. And that's what this board has to decide on. Is an extra $2 per man per month going to be needed for this item and whatever else is brought forward? So I just say good ideas come forward, but sometimes we can't afford them too. And it's just a matter of the decisions being made on that, so.
Tom, what did you say the amounts were, 31 to?
$31 to $80.
It's on your screen right now,
It is on the screen. right
on
there.
slide
thank you.
35 there.
Thank you.
Again, the basic assessment, which we've been talking about, is $27.25. Property tax, we estimate anywhere from a very moderate 40-cent increase to about $10. And property value, you can see there, anywhere from $3 to $42. And this, of course, is going to depend on when you bought and size and those kinds of things. And what you've done to it.
Go ahead, Azar.
Yes, I would like just one more time. First of all, thanks to the finance department, especially for the last month, actually last 2 months, because it was all on the Jose shoulder. Thank you, because Steve was not here. So I know he did his job, and he did partial with Pam, Steve's job. So we wanted to thank you for that one. You did very great job. I am aware. I am very closely working with them for 3 years. I can say about all of the VMS because I didn't, but closely with finance, I am confident to say that they are great. They are doing great job. They are doing really, sometimes above expectation they are doing. Because I am treasurer, I want to especially thanks all of you. You are here and passing to those that they are not here. And then the other comment for residents, I want to, one more time, please understand that board works very hard for everything. And the increase is only $27.25 regarding to the expenses that we are talking. The rest of them that going up to 81, it depends on the size of your manor. It depends of property and then insurance and property tax. So please talk to your friends out of Laguna Wood and please see how much they are paying for the insurance. And then you will be happy that you live in Laguna Wood. We are working very hard to bring that one down. And thank you again.
Pearl.
Well, I would like to say to all of our residents that all these numbers and so many lines of expenses and incomes, there are lots of items that we have no control over, such as insurance, property tax, utilities, union contracts. So we are left with so much that we can juggle the numbers and try to cut and try to fit, and it's always a very difficult task. But realistically, the things are going up, and as the Director Azari mentioned, if I were to have a manor outside of this village, I have to take my whole insurance, I have to pay my property tax, then everything that we do here, I have to do it outside of here, and probably much, much more. So there's no word to comfort all of us and say that we can save money, but it's just not realistic. So I would like for the residents to consider we are still are much better off here, and we have, as a joint body, we have worked very, very hard to get the best results, and hopefully we will continue to do that, and that's all we can do. Thank you very much.
I wanted to thank staff for doing a great job on this budget, Rev 3. And also, one of the biggest increases that we see, as it's been mentioned over and over again, is the estimated 1.6 million in property insurance, which is our biggest increase by far, bigger than any other increase. But we are working very hard with our broker. We're working with Dan Yost, and they're looking at using different deductibles to reduce the cost. We're looking at possibly going in at some point with Third and United in a proposed plan together. That's down the road a little bit, but we're looking at different ideas on how we could come up with ways of mitigating that 1.6 million any way we can. And we'll have answers to that probably within the next month or so, hopefully before we finalize the budget. But it's a very difficult issue, not only for us, but for all homeowners all over the country. It's not just us, it's all the homeowners. And we're looking at even other homeowner associations like Seal Beach and Northern California and seeing what they're doing and getting ideas from them and seeing if we could work with them on coming up with some solutions, because there's no easy answer to it. But it's a difficult problem, but we're also faced with inflation, which is never ending. It's actually, it is slowing down a little bit, but on the other hand, our community continues to age, and it requires infrastructure improvement, and those things cost money, and it's expensive. So with all that being said, I think staff's done a great job in mitigating the cost of that by keeping control of our employees as best as possible, and so I want to thank them for doing an excellent job, and we appreciate it. I also want to open up to any questions from anyone else after our directors have a chance.
I'll be the last director to speak, maybe. Okay, so this budget represents a reasonable best effort to keep going and preserve what we have without cutting or loss of service. We want to keep our good quality of life and our property values and our life here in United. I mean, this is United and this is the village. We're 50, almost 60 years old now. Of course, we're different from where we were thousands of years ago. But this is our best effort, not to ditch out the future by cutting back on the reserves. We don't want to ditch our future. We want to preserve what we have and do the best we can to keep the quality of life that we have here. Thank you.
And
Thank you. We haven't really spent a lot of time looking at the capital reserve expenditures that are planned for next year, except in an overall. We haven't gone through them one by one necessarily. Here today, we've been really looking at the operating. But I just have a cautionary thought in mind, and that is when you start capital projects in an older community like this is, you find a lot of problems under the rug once you start tearing up concrete and getting into roofs and getting into walls. So I think we ought to be prepared on all of our capital projects that they could be a lot more expensive than we had planned, even with the best of planning. Thanks.
Mr. President? Mr. President, you explained very well all of them. I wanted just to add one thing that just residents knows. We went a little bit even deeper and find a very good insurance broker, because that's a very interesting subject and lots of money. And this is a specialist in the HOA. And that's just, that how much we care. We do whatever we can to find the very professional people on the field and get the best. And I assure you that this group their specialties is HOA, and all clients are HOA. So in that case, you're comparing with other one, the new one that we got it. And it's one of the biggest from the committee association, which is CAI. So that's another to adding to you about our new broker for insurance. Not only investment advisor is the new, the broker insurance is new as well.
Any questions from anyone in the members?
And we do have speaker cards, so Erica, would you call them up, please?
Yes, so we will start first with Mr. Dick Rader, manor number 270, Unit D.
Thank you. Unfortunately, the board was placed in a bad position because of poor funding decisions of past boards. That has to do with the reserve fund. But now it's your fiduciary responsibility to give guidance to future boards. So I want to congratulate Lenny and the board for saying, let's look at a $15 a month increase going forward for 5 years. I think that is a very good first start. I do want to make a couple of comments about the reserve fund. One is, I believe, in addition to what Allison said, that there are expenses that you don't anticipate, there are also things that happen from government regulations, such as, oh, by the way, you have to replace all your fuse boxes. Oh, by the way, we want you to replace all your toilets, low flush toilets. So those are things, I believe, that can come out of reserves. Isn't that correct? Am I
Yes.
right? Yeah. So the reserve fund is really important for us today, not just for the future. The other thing I would say is it's important to recognize what Jose has pointed out. Prospective buyers come here and they are shown the reserve funds and where they're at. So I ask you, if you were a prospective buyer, would you want to buy into a place that shows it's so close to the red, or maybe in subsequent years it's going into the red, which says you are in danger of a special assessment? This young lady right here just told me about somebody, a relative, that just had a very large special assessment where they lived.
$10,000.
Yeah. So the reserve fund is really important. Really important. I do want to make one other comment. It was mentioned that we can get 4 or 5% today. So I realize that. But in order to do that, you either have to say, well, we'll keep on investing in short-term treasuries and hope that 5 years from now it'll still be at 5%. Or you do what I thought I heard. We could get 5% now, but my point is, or 4%, as Lenny was projecting, are you willing, if you go forward with a 4% projection, to invest your funds into a longer-term treasury that will give you the 4%? Are you willing to tie all your money up instead of the plan that you have now, which is short-term? So I just raised that issue because if you're dealing with 4%, you know, and that's what you're banking on. But my bet is, even if you go with the 4%, I don't think it'll make a much difference. You'll see. Thank
you. And second, we have Andre Toring, manor number 188, Unit B.
Thank you for all your time spending on here working on the budget. But back to the question that I had, you don't make policies, you just make directives. And here, I hear them, people say, it's all the past board that made the wrong decision on the reserve. Okay, at that time, like one of the directors mentioned, that we were in a pandemic period. Okay, all the facilities are closed. So people are complaining about why are we still charging more and more? Why do we have increased assessment? So our directive is to say, keep the assessment the same. and management company come up with a budget proposal. The budget proposal was they don't want to cut operations expense, even though they have less people. They want to cut reserve fund because that's what they said. And we ask the question, say, are you sure this is the right way? The recommendation from the experts was, yes, we are sure. Okay, now everybody's blaming the board. And I'm hearing that the board is recommending, say, let's keep the $15. I have to tell you, okay, 3 years later, they're going to blame you, say, because board wanted us to increase only $15. Don't get into management. Stay in your directive, say, keep the assessment low. Okay, you're going to get in trouble if you get into management because management will say, you make the decision, even though the previous board didn't even make the decision. They blame us. Everybody's blaming us. The board made decision. The board made the wrong decision. Okay, board, be very careful. Okay, what kind of a decision you make? You make directive decisions. You don't make management decisions. Here, cut 15%. There, cut 15%. 10% increase $15 there. That's management decision. You need to stay out of it. Otherwise, 3 years later, they will blame you. Even though you're totally honest, okay? But if they have execution problems, they cause mistakes, there's another malware, there's another building problems, all kinds of things, you will be responsible for that. You will be blamed. They will never accept the responsibility of they made a recommendation, and you were just approving their recommendation. It is the management issue. Okay. Second thing is I want to talk about the legal fee here. Okay. There's a legal fee, 2023, 183.
Looks like we're out of time.
2024 is 183. In there's a $50,000, $100,000 for my frivolous restraining order cost.
Okay.
Apparently, they didn't look at it and say, these are expenses that we shouldn't have anymore.
Okay,
They just put it over there.
We're out of time.
There is no itemized calculation. There's
Okay.
no justification.
We're out of time. Thank you, Andre. Thank you. Okay, in kind of in a little response to that is that some of the, I think our board didn't honestly do our fiduciary responsibility a few years ago when we looked at our reserves. We wanted to keep our association fee the same, and but we needed to really add money to our reserves because our reserves were getting into danger zone, and we had to set the tone, we had to set the mark, and now we're doing it because past boards didn't do it. So we have to change that at this point and learn from our past, and so we can't change the past. All we can do is move forward, and so it's our responsibility, our fiduciary responsibility, to set the tone for the future to bring our board and our mutual into financial solvency, and that's what I'm hoping we do over the next 5 years. We bring it out of the red zone and into the yellow zone, and very much in the yellow zone, and keep it from going anywhere close to the red zone. And we have to, we have to watch our reserves, of course, and contribute, but we also at the same time have to control expenses and ask management to help us with that. That's their job. So we have twofold, and we have to look at revenues as well. So it's a complex issue, but I think in the past we can't change what was done, but we need to move forward and try to improve our financial position moving forward. And I think this board has done a good job in doing that. So I commend all of you for your help with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you is there anyone else that wanted to speak? Okay. Thank you all very much. So with that, I will conclude the meeting unless there's anything else that you wanted to bring up. Okay. Thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good job. Good job, Rex. Good job.